So I'm really pleased to be joined by Fenella Hemus today. So a big welcome to you, Fenella, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you, Tony. It's lovely to be here this afternoon. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Fenella is an NLP Master Coach and Trainer. So Fenella, please introduce yourself and tell us more about you, your business, and how you help others in the many different ways that you do.
Okay, so as Tony said, I am a master NLP practitioner and a trainer of NLP, timeline therapy and hypnosis. So on the one hand, I use these techniques and tools, this toolkit, if you like, to enable people to get over their blocks, get unstuck at the deepest level. So a lot of the time is we're just scratching around on the surface when we solve our problems, and NLP and hypnosis and timeline therapy, what they do is they enable you to go as deep as you can, right to the root cause of the problem and remove it. So it's not about managing or coping, it's about actually removing the things that people might have been dealing with for most of their lives, that they kind of just keep burying underneath the carpet, and that actually stops people from having a happy, successful, joyful life. So a lot of my clients I hear, it's about managing my anxiety. Other clients, that's a lot about self-sabotage, that they're real high achievers. So they have this kind of desire to be perfect at everything. And that often comes a lot from past experience and past conditioning, expectations that either their parents put on them, and that they internalize and then they start putting on themselves. So that's on the one hand that I work with clients to do that. And I find that it often just takes about 6 sessions. So combining hypnosis, because a lot of people get a hypnotic induction that they listen to, which embeds their learning. By 6 sessions, I very, very often have clients say to me, I don't know what's happened. I feel so different. I have no idea what's been going on, but I just feel really different. And I will check and I'll say, well, you come to me with your problem. What do you so change, how do you feel about that? If they think change is really hard, and they're like, oh, change is exciting. Somebody else the other day is, how do you feel about that grief that was, you were holding on to, that you've had for most of your life? And they're like, it's gone, absolutely gone. So it isn't exactly like, it's not like waving a magic wand, but what it does is, because we work with the unconscious mind, which is 95% of our behavior. It is about going in and changing that behavior everything is coded in our minds. Everything is an internal representation. And if you change something that is key in that internal representation, someone can't access it anymore. It's literally developing a new pattern. We interrupt the pattern, and the interrupt becomes part of the new pattern. So they learn how to do something differently. If I go into the science of it very, very quickly, it's literally like we create habits and they become like an they can become like a motorway in our head. They're literally wired really, really powerful. We can do it really, really quickly. Our brain is brilliant like that. So creating a new habit consciously can be challenging. It's like our conscious mind is telling us all of this, we need to do this, we need to do this. And our unconscious mind is going, no, you don't, no, you don't. It's like, it's kind of, we're in conflict and fighting. So willpower wears out. And by working in the unconscious mind and removing something from the motorway, like moving a couple of lanes or something, and then what you do is you create a new pathway, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So by repeating behaviors, by repeating and focusing on what we want. So many people focus on what they don't want. And if we focus on what we don't want, that's exactly what we get. And, it's all there's loads and loads of things that come in and get involved with that. And then the other thing I do as well is, because I'm a trainer of over 20 plus years, it made sense for me to go and become an NLP trainer. And I train coaches, and I also train leaders, people who are interested in for themselves, personal development, but also improving their coaching skills. I find I have a lot of coaches come on my training because it just goes deeper. It just goes to, you have so many tools that you can work with anybody who presents to you, anybody, literally, because you just know how to start to work with them. You know what questions to ask. You know how to step into that person's model of the world. So that's what I absolutely love it, because my mission is, supporting
I
other
can
people.
tell you are so enthusiastic about it. So I think one of the things I come across quite often is where people do have these stumbling blocks, and as you've mentioned rightly earlier, these are often deep-rooted from childhood, whether that's caused by something that's happened in their lives, whether themselves as a fear, or whether it's been imparted on them by adults, but it's affecting their lives and stopping them from living a much better life.
Yeah, that's essentially it. And as I said, my background, well, I didn't say that, we were chatting earlier, but my background is working with children. So I have that understanding of how that happens in childhood. And you know, that's where I got really interested in psychology and behavioral psychology as well. And also because some of the work I still do, there's been research around adverse childhood experiences and the effect that that has on terms of mental health and health outcomes when people grow up to, you know, becoming adults. And there's a huge amount, a big piece of research that happened in the US several years ago. So lots of people who work with children now are encouraged to work from that perspective, is that to be aware of how important it is in regards to child protection and safeguarding, that we've got to prevent that sort of thing happening, because it has such a knock-on effect in life, and that feeling of anxiety, feelings of stress, we know that those things are actually not very good for our health anyway, and they cause illness in when we're adults too. So for me personally, you know, stress for me, I think, is a massive to ill health.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No.
I'm very, you know, my approach again is, my background is also as a personal trainer and nutritionist. So I combine that whole understanding of how we can keep ourselves healthy and how we can keep our mind and our body healthy. And with a healthy mind, you know, mind-body connection. We sometimes, you know, we're educated and we kind of cut ourselves. These are like two different things, which is why I encourage all my clients to actually drop in, because they're quite disconnected from their feelings and their body, is to connect back into that and realize that actually, interesting, sometimes some of those pains, some of those aches, some of those problems disappear when they've sorted out their other problems as well.
I think it's very much having, in my sort of words anyway, it's having a balance in every aspect of your life. And if you have something which is out of balance, out of kilt with the rest of it, then you are going to suffer as a result of that. So you need to have that balance in all the key areas of your life, whether it's your physical health, your mental health, you know, your relationships, all those things. They all have a big impact on how you are as a human being. So
yeah, absolutely, definitely. And it's sometimes, because I also am very interested in the resilience and building resilience with others, and that's exactly as you said. It's our relationships, it's our lifestyle, as well as what belief we have in ourselves as well. You know, how effective we can be and how confident we are in our own decision making as well, and also how much we can think how much control we think we have over our lives too. There's quite a lot of people believe that things get done to them, as that they're at the effect of the world, and actually that's not helpful. That kind of puts us in a very disempowered position. And part of what I do as an NLP trainer and with my clients is very much getting the clients to recognize that they are at cause, and there is no judgment in that. It is what it is. We are where we are as a result of all our decisions in our life. It's what we do next that counts. And by taking responsibility and knowing that we can affect change is incredibly empowering. And it's kind of just reframing the perspective that people end up having a lot of the time on their lives, is that they have no control, that they're at the control of their emotions or their body or their illness or any of that. And that's just becomes a very disempowering and energy sapping way to live, because it does take away our happiness. It does take away the joy of living and the ability to believe that we can create whatever we want. You know, essentially we can create whatever we want in our lives. We're not going to just do it just like that. but what we believe, what we think in our minds, we will create, we will see. So
I think we are limited definitely by our beliefs, aren't we? I'm sure part of what you are doing is getting people to realize they can make these changes. They can make their lives better going forward. They may not be able to undo what's happened in the past, but they can certainly make a change from now going forward.
Yeah. So yes, and that's exactly what I support people to do. And it's kind of coming to terms with whatever has happened in the past. So we're not delving around in the past. I'm essentially not really interested in what has happened. I'm interested more in how the person does what they do.
Right.
Because
okay.
once we work out how they do what we call do their problem, do the pattern of behavior, do the habit, and then change something in that, and change the strategy for them to do it, or realize they have more choice and reveal the resources they actually have, which they're not paying attention to, because they're just, like I do this with my hands, they're paying attention to their problem. That's all that they can see. Once they start to open out their thinking and have more choice, we don't take anything away from anyone. It's about increasing choice for somebody increasing their choice in their number of behaviors that they can actually do, but also taking the emotion off past events, because we only really relive the past in the present. We can't, and we can review it, but there is no point in having, being triggered all the time to go back to that emotion, because that's going to keep us stuck. So by using this timeline therapy and hypnotherapy, it's about removing the emotion that's attached to those events in one fell swoop, so people have that energy released so that they can look at the future in a different way. Because if that's not, our mind is always looking for closure. That's what we get when we're asleep. When we go into, in sleep, we're in the dream state. Our brain is it's filing everything away, and all the brain waves are coming from from different parts of the brain, just to file things away and get resolution, which is why they say sleep on it. And in the morning, everything's either better or you've got an answer to whatever's going on.
It works for me quite often, so that's my approach to things.
It's just what our brain does, and what it will continuously do is, if we haven't resolved something, it will continuously represent it in whatever format when it knows it thinks. I think you're in a good place to deal with this now, and we have the choice either to bury it yet again, or we have the choice to we go through it either on our own, we find a way of dealing with it, or with a coach, or go on some training or whatever, and finally resolve it, and then realize what a release of energy there is as well, because it takes energy to hold on to things.
I think negative energy is more sapping than anything else. You mentioned there's 6 steps or the 6 sessions that you would do typically with a client. What is involved in each of those steps?
So essentially, they may come in a different order, and the exact processes that are used depend on the individual client. So what is going to work for them? And sometimes, try things and they don't work. And that's the beauty of NLP is, it's about being experimental and creative. And that's why I like it, because it's not about rules. It's about stepping into the world of the client. So our client presents to me, and I will ask for their story, but we will talk about it once, just to give a foundation. And then from there, we really, really drill down and identify what the problem is. And often the problem isn't the one that presents that they come with. It's like we find what the problem is, what the real underlying problem is. And then often we kind of look at the limiting identifying, as we're talking, is limiting beliefs will come out, the negative emotions will just come out in the conversation. And the questions that I will ask some questions that will cause somebody to think about their problem in a way that they maybe never thought about it before. And it's that trigger to kind of start to loosen the edges, loosen the grip that they have on that problem, to soften the edges. And of course, building the whole rapport thing as well, is then getting the client to start to think differently themselves, because this is me, I'm the guide. It's all a client is doing all of this work themselves, and making the changes themselves. It's a do with, not a do to. And then we may look at their values in a specific area of which this problem is taking place. So for example, if it's a problem around eating and emotional eating, weight loss, we will look at values in terms of their life, not health, because health is life. So it's bigger. If we haven't got thinking about eating in our values for life, then we need to put that in. And we can, and in NLP, we can put values into somebody's unconscious mind. We can change the order that values mean to people, because again, everything is coded. Every single thing is coded, and it's about changing that. And that's where the amazing subtlety comes in, because we use all our senses. We're using our senses all the time, taking information in and storing it in our mind. We're just repeating. We're just guessing what we're seeing. By the age of 35, it's essentially, we might just be a set of programs, and we're just kind of looking at something and we're just clicking in our mind going, oh yeah, I've seen that before. That's why we miss so many things as well.
Automatic pilot.
What we think, what we see, and we don't pay attention to anything else. So then the other things I'll do is I very, very often is remove the negative emotions and remove the limiting beliefs and turn the limiting beliefs into more empowering beliefs. Then we'll look at whether they've got creating strategies that will enable them to be more effective in whatever thing that they are doing. We might use anchoring, so creating an anchor, which will mean that they can access a feeling or access a resource if they're feeling challenged at any time. So again, it's lots about repetition, but repetition in different ways. Creating an environment where they're going to have the greatest opportunity for success. And I won't say chance, because it's opportunity for success. And then often it's embedded with some tailored hypnosis. So inductions are written for the client. They're not off the shelf. They're written after I've found out a little bit about the client.
Very bespoke to that individual.
Very, very, so they will connect to it. And essentially, that's it. If I'm working with a client, so I do work with some business clients. If it's business coaching, then we'll look at, after we've removed the negative emotions and the limiting beliefs, we'll look at goal setting as well. Goal setting is really, really important. And NLP has what I call a way of setting goals that's like on steroids. It's not just smart, it's smarter and more. The goal is tested, and then we will put the goal in someone's unconscious mind, and there's a process for that as well.
Okay.
But the purpose being is that we're activating what's called the reticular activating system. So the idea being is that once you've got something, the conscious mind is the goal getter, the unconscious mind is the goal. I always say that wrong. The unconscious mind is the goal setter, the unconscious mind is the goal getter. So we need to make it the most compelling, the most powerful goal that someone has. That idea when you're wanting to buy a car and suddenly you see that car everywhere because your brain is activated to. So all I do, all these processes we do naturally, it's about making it, doing it consciously and doing it with a purpose, really, to get the outcome that we're looking for, as opposed to the outcome. Well, we often, when I ask clients what they want, they often tell me what they don't want. And I'm like, well, that's what you're going to get. Because so essentially that will probably be about 6. Every session, clients have work to do afterwards, between sessions, to embed their learning.
How many periods do you have in between the sessions? Is it sort of once a week, or is it?
Generally, to start off with, I will do once a week for the first 4 sessions. It may for the first 3 sessions, it depends on how fast the client moves. And then they may be 2 weeks to a month between the last sessions as well. Right. It's about really embedding, getting the majority of the work done very, very quickly in a very supported way, and then allowing the clients to carry on practicing their new behaviors, practicing their new habits, and getting confident with doing that by themselves. And then just having check-ins, you know, if anything crops up. Because sometimes, you know, when people make quite big changes at the unconscious level, their life does change quite a lot, and it can rock the boat with the people around them.
I can imagine, yes.
And that can be the challenge, because what we say, I mean, the way we look at it is that what it's doing is it's provoking the people around them. It's making them uncomfortable because they realize and they see how much somebody can change. And they know this old person. It's the familiar person. It's like when you in your family, is we always, when you have the same old arguments,
yeah.
and you can kind of like guess what's going to next.
Yeah.
The pattern we run.
Yeah.
But by changing that, you know, it can be quite challenging for people because it's comfortable. It's again, you're maybe provoking somebody else to that perhaps they could do this change as well, or that they've got some responsibility to be making some kind of changes. And yeah, they feel like they're having the apple cart upset. But ultimately, it's again, depending on your perspective. You know, if you have a growth mindset, it's kind of like, yeah, we can all change. I mean, how much have we changed in the last year?
We've been forced to, but it shows that we can change.
And that's my that will be my argument from going forward, because I've never believed that change is hard. I believe that that's it's a decision that we make. I've never, when I was a child as well, I used to wonder why people would say, oh, but change is hard. And then I was like, no, it's not. It's this, we decide, we make it hard.
I think change is only hard when you resist it. If you want change to happen, then my experience at the very least is it's easy and it's pleasurable and it's positive. But when you want that change.
Yeah, like when we get a new phone or anything, you know, yeah, anything that is like, oh yes, or a new car or those external things. But it's quite often it's the internal things where we believe that it's crazy, you know. Again, it's a belief, and I tell you, I just have to say is I had a session with somebody. My dad died when I had a lot of death happen in a very short space of time, and I went and I had some. I decided to do this healing. It's called theta DNA healing, and I sat there and I was going through the whole part of the grief thing around my dad, and I was focusing on this. And I said, oh, it's really hard. And the woman said to me, it's as hard or as easy as you want to make it. And that has never, ever left me, you know, in terms of those major changes. It actually was. It reframed everything for me, because I said, yes, I can hold on to this for the rest of for however long, or I can view it in a different way. So, yes, I've had some great teachers in my time.
Change is often natural. It's a natural thing to change as life goes on. So it does depend on your outlook on things.
Yeah.
In terms of the obviously what you do, is it done only on a one-to-one basis, or are you mentioned about couples? Obviously, you can change the dynamics, should we say, or upset the apple cart, as you mentioned earlier. Do you do couples training, or is it best done on a one-to-one basis?
No, I will work with couples as well, relationship coaching. Some of it may be done separately, and then there's always got to be
more together,
several sessions together. So it could be that the one session each would be separate to start off with, because that will give me a good understanding of the different perspectives and the dynamic that might be, the issues that might be going on from my perspective, because when they're together they will be behaving differently. I
can see that. Would people, or do people have more than one problem or issue that they want to resolve?
What can happen is they'll come with several problems, and what I do with them is to find the problem underneath the problem. Okay. So quite often is by going a little bit deeper, is that we will find there's an underlying problem.
Right, okay.
And by removing, so for example, some of the limiting beliefs, what I've found, by working on people letting go of stuff from the past, the negative emotions held on significant events. We go further than that, but when they do all of this process, timeline therapy is incredibly powerful. It's just such an incredibly powerful. It's used with people who have PTSD as well. So yeah, used for phobia removal. It's a very, very powerful. It's way of rewiring the mind. And by removing all of that other stuff underneath, what ends up happening is we'll come and check on the problem, and the person might say, well, it's not there anymore. It's gone. I feel differently. And that's why it's so important to really get underneath all of that surface stuff. It's about doing the maximum amount of work and making the maximum amount of change with the least amount of intervention, essentially. Because that's why it makes it quick. That's why it is quick. It's not about being in sessions for weeks and weeks on end, really. And it's not a magic wand. Must be clear about saying that. It's not a magic wand. It does require each client to take action, and it can be challenging, quite challenging, because it depends on what a good grip, how much the client actually wants to hold on to their problems sometimes. And it's about kind of getting that out in the open and becoming really honest with ourselves, or with the client becoming really honest with themselves, and then checking. I mean, I've checking that I had this one client I had that I couldn't work with her. And so yes, it's identifying that, and kind of there's no judgment, but there's no judgment about any of this. It is what it is. It's just about, okay, how are we going to get rid of this? Because we can get rid of what we call it secondary gain.
Yeah.
When somebody gets something from doing their problem, it might be attention, it might be a certain response, a certain bit of feedback, it might be any of those things. And it's about kind of identifying, okay, what can we replace that with? It's not about, we don't want to leave any gaps in anyone's life. We don't want to leave any holes. Because often when people are making change, they're thinking about what they're going to lose. And it's about what you're going to gain. It's just kind of making that seamless change and removing the other thing. Because it's about making it making it happen easily and more effortlessly. It's not about this belief that change has to be hard, or that it's got to be a struggle, and all the language that we hear around it, suffering, and that language is laden with, gosh, it's going to be a battle as well.
Often the thought of something, whether that's painful, negative, or whatever it might be, is far worse than reality. And to some extent, I might be wrong, but I can see why people would come to you and think this is going to be so difficult, so hard, I'm never going to be able to do it. And the reality is nothing like that.
Yeah. And sometimes, if that's what people want to believe, and that's going to get them change, that's exactly what we'll do, is we'll make it like that, because it's about the client. And the other thing is also really is teaching the client about understanding their mind. So recognizing how our emotional limbic response is set up to, fire that fear, fire the negativity, because we have what's called a negativity bias. I personally do believe that we focus on that far too much.
Yeah.
Because there are those of us who are absolute optimisms. My mum is an optimist, and thank you that I grew up with her, because I'm an optimist. So it's recognizing that yes, there is this, but it doesn't have to be like that. It can be something else as well, because just as you can make it negative, we can make it positive, because therein lies the power of this thing that we've got on our shoulders. We've got an incredible potential. You think about people who've lost the ability to walk, people who've lost half of their brain, their ability to communicate, and they're able to learn to walk and talk again. They're no different from you or I or anyone else.
Yeah.
They're only different because of the way that they think.
Yeah.
their decision that they've made about making those changes, that they're not going to be limited. So if they can do it, we can all do it. And yeah, I mean,
does every single person have some form of blocker or issue that if they could overcome that, their lives would be much more enriched or better? Or are there individuals where they haven't got any problems whatsoever and they don't need it?
Well, I think that if people's lives work for them, if they're happy, if they're content,
Yeah.
I think there's a huge amount to be said for contentment.
Yeah.
And if what they do sounds, if the way they do things looks really bizarre to somebody else, but it works, you know, it's not about changing people who don't want to change. It's about enabling people to be that amazing individuals that they are. You know, the diversity of thinking in human beings, and some of it can sound, you know, seem really bizarre to other people. But that doesn't mean to say it's any less valid. So I think we all have problems. We all have blocks.
Yeah.
It depends on when we realize that perhaps it's holding us up. So if, for example, every time we get to the next level, we will perhaps face a block, that fear.
Yeah.
Now we can work it out for ourselves, or we can get a coach, and you know, a coach, to have coaches, because it's seen as a valuable thing to do, is to have the accountability, to have to someone to come along and go, no, you're not getting away with that. Stop trying to kid yourself. You know, that's a limiting, you know, that's a bit of a limiting belief going on there. And so it's like, for me, it's that human beings, we're evolving all the time.
Yeah.
We probably haven't got time to go into it, but there's a whole thing around something called spiral dynamics. And that's about, I don't know if you might have heard it, but it's about that we can look at it on a world scale in terms of culture and society. We can look at it on an individual scale as how we evolve. We're born, we're at one level of thinking, we go to the terrible twos where we're at another level of thinking, and then we're evolving all of the time in terms of our complexity, ability to do complex things and think in a complex way. And some people will stay at a certain in a certain level of complexity, and they're happy with that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And other people always that wanting to evolve more and more. And over history as well, human thinking has evolved in terms of its level of complexity. If you think about the level of complexity we have to deal with, you know, human beings have evolved to deal with that to a degree, but lots of people are feeling disconnected from that, and it's causing them problems. And I think, you know, around the atmosphere of fear and control and the thinking, you know, there are things that we need to be paying attention to. We really do need to be paying attention to, because I think, you know, the generation of children that we have now are quite fearful and anxious. And they're not born like that. They're not born like that. They come from, you know, they come from adults who have become that. So we're all in it, you know. It's a responsibility of each and every one of us. So yes.
I think we all have. I think we need to be conscious, obviously, of what we are doing to children. And as you say, there are so many children at the moment who are anxious about the world and obviously themselves and where they fit in and what their future look like. And I think that's been very much heightened over the last 12 months for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Let me touch on another passion of yours, which you mentioned before we started recording, and that is about changing the world and the planet. And so tell us more about that, because that actually struck a chord with me earlier.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to, yeah, hear from your perspective around that as well. So one of the things, again, when I work with children, I worked on a city farm. So it was all very much about connecting with the earth, about environment. You know, I've always been very interested in the environment. I've always been very interested in the production of food and how different systems connect. So this connects into spiral dynamics. It's about systems thinking. So a human being doesn't exist, and none of my clients, they don't exist in isolation. They exist within their relationship to themselves, within their relationship to the people around them, within the relationship to the environment that they live in, the society, etc., and so on and so forth. It goes out. So for me, again, this is about everything is energy. We're transmitting energy all the time. We're absorbing energy. So energy can't be made or, you know, broken. It's just transformed. It's just transmitted. It's shared. So essentially, my belief is that what I do has an effect on the rest of the world. It has a knock on. There's a ripple effect. And I've always wanted to, I've never had children, but I've loved children. And I've always wanted to leave, I believe, and this is a Native American view, is that we hold the world in trust for the next generation. So what we do and the decisions that we make need to think about that. My decision, I don't live, everything I do has an effect. So what I cause has an effect. So it's about, for me, personal responsibility. And thinking about how I live and how I act and how I behave and how I can share that with other people as well, essentially, to have that knock-on effect to make the world a better place, really. So whilst I maybe have some strong views about what's going on and it may kind of days, get me down, I still have, there's always hope for me. There's always this belief that, I still can create some change. I still can make, my motto is make a difference, leave a mark. So that's essentially what I live by, is making a difference, to make it better. To the African proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child. So it's my responsibility, even if I don't have children, to consider people around me, for me, it's fundamentally the next generation, because they're ultimately, in my opinion, that's what I do. That's who I do everything for. It really is. That was my my light bulb moment a few years ago, when I just realised is that all my decisions are based on the fact that I want to leave the world a better place for the next generation. That's why I work with children. I mean, because I absolutely love their imagination, their creativity, and I think, we don't respect children enough, in my opinion, but there we go, for their thinking, for their amazing thinking, their disruptive thinking.
They're a different way of thinking. As I said to you, I think it's magical because, again, we touched on this before we started recording, is they will definitely ask you questions that no adult will ever ask you. And those questions can really get you thinking or stump you. And it's a great question, but it would only ever come from a child.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be amazing to maintain that level of imagination and creativity? And it is because they have that, as a critical barrier between their unconscious and their conscious mind. It's not rigid. So therefore they, especially before the age of 7, they operate in that space in between, essentially. So they will, the imaginary world and the real world, they're not so separate. And actually, when we, in hypnosis as well, we will go into that state, because literally what happens as well is there's a physical thing that's going on. When children are born, they have their brain waves are very, very slow. And then, early first years, they're in what's called theta, which is the dream state. So their brain waves are quite slow. And then they will develop into alpha, which is faster in their teenagers. And then as adults and young adults will go into what's called beta. So they're very fast brainwaves. But as adults, we have access to all of those speeds. So, and then we also have gamma, which is that bolt of inspiration, which is when we're imperfect. We have that harmony, light bulb moment when essentially all it's just, yeah, the brainwaves just shoot in one way and everything comes together. When you understand that, that makes us, you know, imagine if, and I love to say to people, you know, everything around us was once a figment of somebody's imagination, obviously nature wasn't.
Yeah.
But your chair, everything you look, isn't that incredible? So that was a figment. They created it twice, once in their mind and once in reality. So that's what we're doing all of the time. You know, so children will be doing that constantly, and we will be doing that actually just the moment when we go to sleep and the moment we wake up in the morning. So why not put that to use and think about what we can be and how we can have our day, and put that in our mind whilst we're in the dream state, put it into our unconscious mind and utilize that.
It probably shows how important sleep is to us.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yes, it's incredibly important. Also, you know, for stress levels and everything, anxiety, having a lack of sleep increases our anxiety. So it makes us feel like life is more manageable and problems are easier to resolve.
In terms of the problems you have with, I mean, you're working with children as well, you said, yeah?
Currently, I don't work with children.
Okay.
I've had some clients, young clients. The tendency is the youngest I've worked with is 12 years old, and doing hypnosis with their parents there when they've got their eyes open. It's really hilarious when their parents are quite disconcerted. It's like, yeah, child will go into trance with their eyes open.
Are there opportunities for you to do more of that, you know, working with children through NLP? Or is it something in terms of outside of that where you want to get more involved with and you know, help change the world that will improve it for our kids?
I would. So in terms of my business, it's about that focus, isn't it?
Yeah.
We encourage, because I'm quite new in business, it's the focus at the moment is on the NLP training. What I would love, and what is obviously going to bring in income, which education doesn't have money. But my personal belief is we had NLP in schools, and there are some teachers who are trained in NLP, and you know, there are, and they have a different approach. They will look at children in a different way because has different, and change their teaching to meet children's different needs, different way of learning. But for me, is if a child understands how their mind works, that's really empowering, because it means then that they know that they can be the problem solver, that they have the capacity to, you know, and it's the critical thinking, and therein can be a bit of a challenge. Is when we have critical thinkers, we have people who challenge, we have people who say, I don't agree with that, and this is the reason why, and they'll be reasoning in a way so that, you know, it could be that, do we really want lots of people like that?
We need a variety of people.
So no, well, I mean, my personal belief is yes, we do, but I would say is that can be quite challenging to the powers that be. Again, when people feel, it's about ego as well. I think that some adults can feel intimidated by the questions, because children's questions sometimes reveal their limitations, and there's no judgment on this. Again, it's revealing the things that they find difficult. And often that we find is that they'll put children down because of that. And I certainly, that was my experience as a child, is that I would question things and people would just tell me I was being so stupid, you know, things like that. And it's not about that. You know, a good teacher is, I learn from my clients. I learn from everyone I teach. And it's that collaborative approach. It's not having that ego. It's recognizing that, the child is younger, but they're going to come out with some amazing ideas. And I remember that in the playground, and I'd sit there and I go, how on earth did you come in and think about that? That's amazing. You know, it's just, and let's embrace that, because this is innovation and this is creativity. And can we bring play into, and this is my other, bringing play into business?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely all for that. So is it an opportunity for you to be able to go into schools and do more of this with children?
Currently, it's not something I focused on. Again, it's about, there may be, but I think one of the ways in, and I did look at it early on, was around going in on an inset day. And basically basically doing a session with the teachers to get them to understand the NLP communication model, insofar as then that they can pass that on to children, but also that they can then differentiate their teaching a bit more and recognize that, yes, that would be one way in, is to encourage teachers to start to teach differently and without the labels. Because, again, in NLP, we don't do labels. So,
yeah, I just wondered also with regards to, you know, the period that we've gone through, and with children certainly stressing over, you know, their education, etc., and obviously what the future holds for them, whether or not there is maybe more of an opportunity now than there's ever been to be able to get into the classroom and share these practices with people. So, with the
well,
children.
if you have anyone if anyone is listening who is interested, then they can contact me. But one of the things that is, I think currently, is schools are so focused on maintaining their doing the focus on the safety. And I know this is from our after school clubs, because I teach play workers, is that they're so focused on meeting the guidelines, and there's a lot of fear around doing that, and restrictions. Perhaps they have, and again, yes, all the schooling and pressure from externally that children have got to catch up on their schooling, which is absolutely from that old school view that there is only one way of learning, because there isn't. Children will be learning all the time when they've not been at school. Some you know, in ways, some more than other, but I just think that focus on the education has to happen in a certain way. That formal way in school we're missing a trick. I mean, then don't get me started on the education system, but I think it's, again, recognizing that perhaps we just need that little bit of time, and in a way children need to just kind of get back with their friends. They're incredibly resilient, and they're incredibly, if we let them be, and we support them as well, we encourage them all of the time, they will find, a lot of the time, they will find their own way. They're far more capable than we actually, our society currently gives them credit. I think we've considerably infantilized children over the last 20 plus years.
And children can be very resilient.
They are very, very resilient, given them the right. And it's just about having some constancy, really, and having that at least one adult in their life who they can rely on, who they can feel safe around.
We are coming towards the end. There's a question I like to ask all of my guests, and that question is, what does wealth mean to you? So, Fenella, what does wealth mean to you?
Wealth to me means variety of experiences, the opportunity to learn. Wealth is actually the quality of my relationships with other people as well. I think the connection, for me, human beings are, they're an absolute necessity in my life. Having that really deep connection with other human beings. And of course, wealth is having a nice life, and it's having a nice home. And I'm very much more focused on, now that I want to build, and I've made my own provision for wealth, so I've taken responsibility for that. So obviously, that's important to me. But for me, my next part for me is going to be wealth, is to be able to build sufficient capacity in my business where I can actually give some money, donate to I want to give money to adventure playgrounds, because I love them. I just think they're so amazing places to be. So I would like to, for me, wealth would also be able to do that, is to financially contribute to organizations where I cut my teeth, and also that I think are really, really valuable. Wealth means a lot of things to me, actually.
Wealth means a lot of things, and it means different things to different people, and that changes. That also changes over time. But I'm glad to see that you as combine obviously what you're doing, and also as you're passionate to help the world become a better place, but starting with children. So I think that's fantastic. So, Fenella, if people want to work with you, how best would they find you?
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn under my name, Fenella Hemus, or you can connect with me via my website at www.abovebeyondcoaching.co.uk.
Brilliant. I will put those links up in the show notes.
And you can find me also, I have a Facebook group, which is called Magnificent Minds, because that's my favorite word. So yeah, private Facebook where I post regularly. I do videos and offer valuable content around NLP and thinking consciously and more effectively. So yeah, Magnificent Mind.
That's great. You've got plenty of places where people can find you. So, Fenella, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure my listeners are going to, and I've learned an awful lot. There's lots of things I didn't know about NLP. So I know a lot more than I did when we started our conversation today. So thank you for that. And I might be in touch for other things going forward. So I might need to learn more about this. So thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, Tony. It's been lovely, lovely to chat with you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.